T-minus 21 seconds, and the solid rocket booster engine gimbal now.
I was in college, heading home from class.
I was in the library of my high school.
So I must have been in college.
I was in senior year of high school.
7, 6. We have main engine start. 4, 3, 2, 1, and liftoff.
I was in the library, and
So we were rushing home, and a bunch of kids were gathered around a television set.
And I remember watching that. They had like a film of it.
And we actually had TVs on that were showing the launch.
And liftoff. Liftoff of the 25th Space Shuttle mission.
Altitude 9, obviously a major malfunction.
I do remember hearing about it, and it was a very tragic feeling.
that was horrible news to hear, and I was very sad. And
Everyone was very shocked and very sad.
I just remember people just feeling really sad.
We have a report from the flight dynamics officer that the vehicle has exploded.
And my first question was this the thing that Krista McAuliffe was on?
and I remember trying to find out more information about what actually had happened.
Before the tragedy, the Challenger demonstrated the United States' technological superiority against the Soviets during the Cold War. Afterwards, rather than weakening the United States' image, the tragedy and Krista's death showed the great impact that an ordinary person could have on American society and the world.
On January 28, 1986, the Space Shuttle Challenger took off and exploded 73 seconds after liftoff at Cape Canaveral, Florida. There were 7 crew members on board the shuttle, including 1 high school teacher. In the blink of an eye, all were killed in the tragic disaster. Thousands of people took time off of work and traveled down to Florida to watch. Students, parents, and children were all gathered to send their friends off into space. This launch was different from the previous NASA launches because it was the first shuttle to allow a civilian, a school teacher, into space. Krista McAuliffe was chosen among thousands of other applicants to go into space.
Krista grew up in Framingham, Massachusetts, graduated from Framingham State, and pursued her career in teaching. She was extremely passionate, exuberant, and dedicated to her work and students.
I want to teach people that an ordinary person can have an impact on civilization and on society. And when you heard her say that, she said it so simply and so straight that you couldn't help but think, yeah, maybe an ordinary person can have an impact on civilization. And then no one could have ever dreamed that how right she was. This is where you can to uphold people's memories of her, and then for those folks who don't have memories of her, to give you a little insider scoop of what it was to be this woman and why losing her meant so much to so many people.
By giving a perspective from a non-astronaut, because I think the students will look at that and say, this is an ordinary person. This ordinary person is contributing to history, and if they can make that connection, then they're going to get excited about history, they're going to get excited about the future, they're going to get excited about space.
And that's the message she wanted to pass on to kids, that, you take risks. You don't limit yourself. The motto on her application was reach for the stars.
Krista strived to make a difference. She taught her students that you do not have to be rich or famous to make an impact on the community. She inspired those around her to make goals and taught them that anyone is able to achieve their goals if they worked hard and believed in them. Krista left the world with an important legacy that will be remembered.
The Space Shuttle program was conceived by NASA under President Nixon as a new and reusable method of space transportation. Despite numerous delays, the first U.S. shuttle mission, STS-1, commenced in 1981 and ended in success.
The shuttle seemed to be a giant leap in technology over the previous Apollo capsules, carrying more astronauts in a larger cabin and being mostly reusable. It also had a large lifting capacity. It was intended to be used to build an American space station and to bring American spy satellites into orbit.
The space shuttle made Americans confident in their technological prowess and became a symbol of American ingenuity. NASA plans an ambitious list of missions for the new spacecraft with more and more launches every year. The Challenger seemed to be the safest and most reliable spacecraft yet, and then disaster struck. The Space Shuttle Challenger incident caused much controversy. Many employees at NASA glazed over the fact that they were warned of a fault in the O-rings that sealed the joints in the Space Shuttle boosters, which is what caused the accident. Engineers from Moreton Thiokol had discovered problems with the O-rings when operating in cold temperatures and advised NASA not to launch at temperatures below 53 degrees. NASA ignored the warnings and launched at below freezing temperatures, causing the O-rings to fail. Alan McDonald is the former lead engineer on the Shuttle Solid Rocket Booster program for Moreton Thiokol and an author. He was representing Moreton Thiokol at the mission control during the time of the launch and recommended against launching on the night before. His book, Truth, Lies, and O-Rings, exposed what happened behind the scenes at NASA before, during, and after the Space Challenger explosion. Alan McDonald explains his experience testifying to the Rogers Commission.
That we recommended not launching below 53 degrees Fahrenheit. And I'll never forget the chairman, William Rogers, of this commission, and Neil Armstrong, who was the vice chairman, stood up and kind of looked at me and said, "Would you please come down on the floor and repeat what I think I heard? Because if I heard what I think I heard, this will be in litigation for years to come."
There was a lull in space travel after 1975 for NASA. The Challenger was important because people began traveling in space again.
People didn't realize that in 1986, we were still in the Cold War.
During the Cold War, the space shuttle was a key American asset for two major reasons. The first one was propaganda. It was the most advanced manned spacecraft of all time, carrying up to 8 astronauts, as opposed to the Soviet Soyuz spacecraft, which accommodated 3 in a cramped capsule. The other advantage, that it was NASA's only way to launch a spy satellite into a polar orbit after the retiring of the Saturn series rockets. NASA's arsenal of Delta, Atlas, and Titan rockets at the time could not lift spy satellites into a polar orbit, while the space shuttle could. This made the space shuttle a crucial part of America's nuclear force, in that it could launch satellites that could detect a Soviet launch and allow America to launch missiles in return, enabling the policy of mutually assured destruction. When the space shuttle was grounded, NASA had no way to launch spy satellites. President Ronald Reagan was always looking for ways to show the superiority of the United States against the Soviet Union during the Cold War. Space travel, among others, was important in showing off the new technology and national preeminence that the United States held. Reagan was extremely enthusiastic about NASA's space exploration program. In 1984, President Reagan actually announced his plans for a permanent human presence in a space station. Reagan witnessed the Challenger explode, and he gave a very heartfelt speech for the grieving nation.
Today is a day for mourning and remembering. Nancy and I are pained to the core by the tragedy of the Shuttle Challenger. We know we share this pain with all of the people of our country. This is truly a national loss.
Concord High School received letters from all over the country, all over the world. I'm talking like 1 million little letters from elementary students all over the world. I think back of why I've stayed teaching so long. I'm sure that a part of the reason is because of that experience so early in my teaching.
Everyone was watching as the Challenger lifted the first civilian into space. Everyone watched as the Challenger exploded and pieces of metal flew into different directions. The disaster hit the world hard. People were shocked and heartbroken. The world all mourned together at the time, and still, 30 years later, people reflect and are touched by this tragic event.